In this exercise, you're going to start by creating the project workspace that will be used for the remainder of these labs. You're also going to use the report data wizard to create your first report application. You will add the compiler options to then generate the .rdd file, the file that's required for input for the report designer. Of course, you won't be able to use the application effectively until you create a report, which you will do in the next lab exercise. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and create a new project workspace. So I can select File, New. I select Project Workspace. I select Project Workspace, the .4pw, and I click OK. This goes ahead and sets up a project workspace with a few nodes predefined for us. We're not going to be using the library node, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the library node. And so now I have a node called Applications and a node called Databases. For the Databases node, I want you to go ahead and alter the target directory. We're going to move the -bin extension. When we create our database schema, the target directory is telling us where to put the .sch file that's created as a result. We want that to reside in the same directory as our source files, so we're going to go ahead and just have it go directly into the workspace dir, which is where we're going to be storing our source files. For the application node, I want to show you that you can rename it, so I right-click and I select Rename, and I'm going to rename this to App1. For this application node, under my external dependencies, I'm going to need to include the libraries that include the Genero Report Writer functions. So let me click on the ellipse, click on the plus side, and I'm going to add libgre.42x. That puts it in as an external dependency. The only other thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this application node recognizes the database library as being part of what it needs to compile. So under Advanced Properties, it brings up the property page. I can click on Dependencies, and I can see the Databases node is selected. It is checked, and that's what I want. So I can go ahead and click OK. Now I'm going to add two virtual folders to this App1 application node. One virtual folder I'm going to name Reports. The other virtual folder I'm going to name SRC for my source files. Now I've got my project organized like I want it to be organized, and I need to save it in a directory. We're going to go ahead, I'm going to have you open up My Documents and My Genero Files, and go ahead and add a new directory. So I add a new folder, and I'm going to call this folder GRW Class. All of the work that we're going to be doing, we're going to store inside of this folder. Now that I have this folder created, I can go ahead and do a Save As. I want to navigate to that directory. So under My Documents, under My Genero Files, I find my GWR class directory, and I need to give the project workspace a name. I'm going to name it GRW class as well. I click Save, and you can see that the project workspace has been given the name. And now we're ready to go and add our database schema. To add the database schema, I'm going to go to the Databases menu, and I'm going to select New Schema. We're going to go ahead and pull that schema in by connecting to the database via our ODBC driver. So let me start by giving it a path. The path that I want it to be in My Genero Files, GRW class, and then I'm going to name this cusdemo. So it'll be cusdemo.4db when it's created. I want it to insert the file into my database node. So I specified where it's going to go. I can then go and I can identify the information it needs to connect to that database and extract the information. I'm using GeneroDB. My driver I need for this, for my installation, is the 3.81 driver, so I select DBM ADS 381. And now my ODBC data source, mine is set up to say Genero DSN. My schema name, it's the cusdemo schema. My username is cusdemo, and I enter in the password. I test the connection, and I should get a message back saying that my connection to the database is successful, and I do. So I click OK, and I click Next. I do not want to import the system tables. I only want to see those tables that are user created inside of the database, so I can click on Finish. As you can see, it creates a cusdemo.4db. It actually builds it and extracts the schema, so that's good. And I can see that I have my 6 tables. I can click on any one of the tables to identify the columns that are involved and find out information about that column. My next step is to go out there and create the report driver and the report block using the report data wizard. So let me go ahead and select File New. And this time I'm dealing with the reports, and I want to use the report data wizard. So I click on OK. So the first thing it asks me is, for my database custom demo, which in my system is the only one I've set up, what tables do I want to bring across? I'm going to include all the tables. That way this data that's being streamed across can be used for many reports. I then need to define how these tables are joined together. Now, our database has a few joins that are not necessary, that are automatically populated for us. So let me go ahead and rework these for us. So the first thing I'm going to do, let me extend this column out so that I can see everything fine. First thing I'm going to look for is my customer.storenum, and I want that to link together with the orders.storenum. Next thing I want is my orders.ordernum to link to my items.ordernum. I then want my items.stock number to link to my stock.stock number. I then want my stock.factory code to link to my factory.factory code. And finally, I want my customer.state to join to my state.state code. Now, these other two joins that were automatically populated for us, we don't need. We just need to identify the primary foreign key relationships, or how these tables are related, so I can go ahead and remove those. I've now identified how the tables relate to each other. My next screen says, which columns from these tables do you want included in that record that's streamed across? I'm going to include all of the columns by clicking my double arrows, because I want to be able to use this report data being streamed across for any report that I can imagine. I can go ahead and click Next. For the order by, I need to identify how the data is streaming across, what order it's streamed across. Now, this order by is going to be important for any report if you want to organize it by, in our case, we're going to organize it by the store number. We're going to also organize it by the order number. So those would be our logical groupings that we have inside of our reports. So I add those to my order by. If I needed to move them up and down, I could move them up and down using the arrows here on the side, but I want it to be first sorted by store num, and then within each store num, I want it to be sorted by order num. I can go ahead and click Finish, and as you can see, it's gone out here and it's built for me the 4GL file that is the report block and the report driver. We're going to have to know the name of this function that we're going to call from our main stub in the next step. So I know that I'm going to be calling a function called run report to handler. Let me go ahead and save this. So I'm going to save as. It's going to be saved inside of that GRW class directory, but I'm going to call this one storeorder.4gl. So storeorder.4gl. And I'm going to place it inside of that sources virtual folder. You can see the storeorder.4gl has been saved. The last thing I need to do for this is I want to put in a compiler option so it builds the RDD file every time this module is compiled. Now, that RDD file is my input to Form Designer, so it's very important that I have that. So I can do a --build--RDD as my compiler option. Now, every time it compiles, that RDD file is going to be created for us. And let me go ahead and save this. Now we want to create our main module stub, so we're going to create a new 4GL file. I can do File New. It's going to be a source file, and it's the source.4gl. This opens up a blank 4GL workspace inside of Code Editor. Now you can type this in. What I've done is I've gone ahead and just copied the information I had on our slide that talks about creating that main stub, and I'm going to paste it in here. Some things that I do have to do, a minor modification. In that when we looked at our storeorder.4gl, I said we were dealing with run report to handler. That's the function that we need to call. So let me go ahead into this 4GL file, and I'm going to replace this run storeorder to handler with run report to handler. The only other thing I may have to change is if you're connecting to a database other than cusdemo, but I am using cusdemo, so I'm going to save that there. And the last thing is when you run this application, you provide the name of the form design file or the form definition document that you want to bring up. For now, we're just going to have a placeholder as a reports folder is empty. So I'm going to leave it at report name.4rp. I've built this. I can now go and then do a save as, and I'm going to name this one report main.4gl, and I'm going to place it again inside of that src virtual folder. Now you can see the report main is out there. We don't have to add a compiler option because the compiler option is the build RDD is something we add to the report driver and report block file. But now I have my main stub and I have my report driver and report block 4GL file. The last thing we want to do is to go ahead and build this application. So I can right click on the application node and I can select build. And down in my output window, I should see that it compiles both successfully and that it links them together to go ahead and create my application, which is app1.42r. To verify that everything was created as expected, I can go ahead and go to my Genero files. I have my GRW class. If I look inside of this GRW class, what you can see is we have our 4PW file, we have our report main, and we have our store order. When it did the compilation, it created the store order.rdd file. You can see that I have my 4DB file, my database file, and it created the cusdemo.sch. Inside of my bin directory, the bin subdirectory, you can see that it has my application.42r, so the executable, and it also has my two 42m files, my report main and my store order. So at this point, we have our report application created. And in the next lab exercise, we're going to go and create a report that we can then stream this data across to so that it will display inside of a report.